Imagine a country that, by all logic, should not exist. A country where huge cities, farms, airports, and roads stand in places where, by every law of nature, water should be moving. Where part of the land lies below sea level, and if the pumps ever stopped, the sea would slowly start taking everything back. And the most surprising thing is that almost 18 million people live on this land. Europe's biggest ports work here, planes take off here, tulips grow here, homes are built here, and all of it depends on dams, canals, pumps, and 1,000 years of stubbornness. This is the Netherlands, a country people literally pulled out of the water. There is an old saying here, God created the world, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. And it sounds like a joke only until you look at the map, because a large part of this country used to be swamps, lakes, bays, and seabed. From the very beginning, this land was difficult to live on. Flat, wet, soft, full of rivers, marshes, and tides. The sea kept coming in, rivers kept flooding, the ground kept sinking, and people still needed somewhere to live. At first, they did not try to defeat the water, they simply moved higher. They built artificial hills and placed houses, farms, and churches on top of them. These hills were called terps. Imagine a village in the middle of water, standing on an earthen platform that people built by hand. Basket after basket, but then the Dutch realized if you only keep escaping, the country will never truly become a country. So about 1,000 years ago, they went on the attack. They began building dikes, cutting off pieces of land from the water and draining them. That is how the polder was born. A polder is land taken from water. It is surrounded by dikes, cut through with canals, and constantly drained by pumps. And it lives by one brutal rule. The pumps must never stop. Not tomorrow, not in winter, not at night, not on holidays. Because a polder exists only while water is being pushed out. Stop the pumps and the land becomes seabed again. At first, the water was pumped by windmills. We usually think windmills were built to grind grain, but in the Netherlands, many of them were real water machines. The wind turned a mechanism. The mechanism lifted water from low land and moved it into a higher canal. From there, the water could flow toward the sea. Step by step, people drained entire lakes. Where boats once floated, fields appeared. Where there was water, villages were built. One famous example is Lake Haarlemmermeer. It was drained, and today Schiphol Airport, one of Europe's busiest airports, stands on its former bed, so every year, millions of passengers land on what was once the bottom of a lake. But this victory had a price. Drained peat soil dries out, shrinks, and sinks. The land falls lower and lower, which means even more water must be pumped out. It became a loop. The better the Dutch drained their country, the more dependent they became on dikes and pumps. That is why water became not just a problem, but the foundation of the entire Dutch way of life. You cannot protect a dike alone. If one person neglects their section, water breaks through there and floods all the neighbors too. So, already in the Middle Ages, water boards appeared. These were local governing bodies that watched over dikes, collected money for repairs, and forced everyone to follow the rules. These water boards still exist today. They are older than the Dutch state itself. The Dutch still vote for the people who manage their water, dikes, and canals. Because for them, this is not abstract politics. It is survival, but even the strongest system once cracked. On the night of February 1st, 1953, a powerful storm met a high tide. The wind pushed a massive wall of water toward the coast. Old dikes failed. Water broke through in several places at once and rushed into sleeping villages. People woke up with icy water inside their homes. Some escaped to attics, others to rooftops. Communication lines went down. Many areas were cut off and did not even know the disaster was happening across the country. More than 1,800 people died. Tens of thousands lost their homes. For the Netherlands, it was a national shock. After that night, the country decided this must never happen again. That is how the Delta Works were born, one of the largest engineering projects in European history. It became a system of dams, locks, barriers, and flood defenses designed to close off the most dangerous sea channels and protect the southwest of the country. The main idea was simple: do not wait for disaster, build the protection before it comes. One of the most impressive structures is the Oosterschelde Barrier. It is a massive construction with movable steel gates. Under normal conditions, the sea can still flow in and out, preserving the ecosystem of the bay. But when a dangerous storm comes, the gates drop and block the water. It was an expensive compromise. They could have simply sealed the bay with a solid dam, but that would have killed the tides, damaged oysters, mussels, birds, and the entire marine ecosystem. The Dutch chose the harder solution because they understood protecting yourself from nature does not have to mean destroying it. Even more futuristic is the Maaslanckering Barrier, which protects the port of Rotterdam. It has two gigantic gates, each almost the size of an Eiffel Tower, lying on its side. Usually, they rest in docks on both sides of the channel. But when the system detects dangerous rising water, the gates float toward each other, close, and block the sea. The decision to close them is made automatically, because the cost of a mistake is too high. But the Netherlands did not only defend itself from the sea, it also changed the map. In the north of the country, there used to be a huge sea bay called the Zuiderzee. For centuries, it threatened the central provinces with floods. So the Dutch decided to do something almost impossible. They closed the sea. They built the Afsluitdijk, a dam more than 30 kilometers long. The salty bay slowly became a freshwater lake called the IJsselmeer. And then they began creating new land on the bottom of the former sea. That is how Flevoland appeared, the largest artificial island on Earth. Today, hundreds of thousands of people live there. It has cities, roads, fields, and farms, and beneath them is former seabed. During the draining, people found old ships. Not one or two, but hundreds of them, medieval boats, trading ships, fishing vessels. That is why Flevoland is sometimes called a dry land ship graveyard. Imagine a farmer plowing a field and suddenly hitting the remains of a ship that once lay at the bottom of the sea. But there is one myth almost everyone knows, the story of a little boy who saw a hole in a dike, plugged it with his finger, and stood there all night, saving the country. Many people think this is an old Dutch legend, but it is not. The story was invented by an American writer in the 19th century. The Dutch themselves had not even heard of it for a long time. Then tourists started coming and asking where the statue of the heroic boy was, so the Dutch, being practical people, eventually put up several statues. The funny thing is that from an engineering point of view, the story makes almost no sense. If a dike starts leaking, a finger will not save it. Water quickly erodes the hole, and a small leak becomes a breach. The real heroes of the Netherlands are not fairy tale boys, but engineers, builders, dike inspectors, pump station workers, and people who spent centuries doing boring, difficult, life-saving work. There is another popular myth that Amsterdam stands on water like Venice. In reality, Amsterdam stands on piles. Under the old city are millions of wooden and concrete pillars driven through soft soil down to a firm sand layer. Even the royal palace stands on thousands of piles, so the city is not floating. It is standing on a huge invisible support system. It might seem that the Dutch have defeated water. The dikes are built, the pumps are running, the barriers are ready. But in recent decades, something unexpected happened. The Netherlands started giving land back to water. Not because it surrendered, because it became smarter. Climate change is raising sea levels, making heavy rain stronger, and causing rivers to flood more often. Engineers realized that you cannot simply keep building walls higher forever. The higher the dike, the worse the disaster if it breaks. So a new idea appeared: do not only fight water, give it space. The program is called Room for the River. In some places, dikes are moved farther inland so that during floods, water can safely spread over prepared areas instead of crashing into cities. Sometimes this means buying farms, moving families, and flooding land that previous generations worked so hard to win from the water. It is painful, but the logic is harsh. Better to give up a field in advance than lose a city later. In Rotterdam, public squares are being built that look normal on dry days, but during heavy rain turn into water storage basins. Floating houses are appearing too. They are not afraid of rising water. They simply rise with it, sliding up and down along guide piles. The Dutch are no longer trying to completely defeat the sea. They are learning to live beside it. And today, the whole world needs their experience. New York, New Orleans, Venice, Bangladesh, Vietnam, wherever cities stand near water, people look to the Netherlands and ask, how did you do it? The answer is not one dam and not one genius project. The answer is 1,000 years of discipline, the habit of thinking decades ahead, the understanding that water does not forgive carelessness. If the pumps in the Netherlands ever stopped, the lowlands would begin flooding within days. After years, the map of the country would start to look like it did 1,000 years ago. The sea would take back what people borrowed from it. The Netherlands is like a bicycle. It exists as long as the pedals keep turning. But the most amazing thing in this story is not the dikes, not the pumps, and not the giant barriers. The most amazing thing is that people turned a wet, dangerous, almost hopeless swamp into one of the richest and most livable countries on Earth. And all of it came from one simple idea: if you cannot defeat nature by force, you must learn how to negotiate with it.